You've seen the videos, I know you have, because there are hundreds of them now, and they all say the same thing. They tell you that while everyone else is fighting over corn and soybeans at commodity prices, there are crops out there selling for $20, $40, even $80 a pound. They show you the numbers, a quarter acre, they say. Look at the math, $80 a pound times this many pounds per acre, and suddenly you're looking at a figure that beats what most people make in a year at a real job. And here's the thing, that number is usually real. These crops do exist: specialty mushrooms, rare culinary herbs, medicinal roots, microgreens, cut flowers, heirloom varieties chefs can't get anywhere else. The prices are real prices from real markets. So why do almost all of those people fail? Because there's a second half to that sentence that nobody ever says out loud. And it's this: a crop is worth $80 a pound to somebody, not to you, to somebody. And if you don't know exactly who that somebody is, what they need, and how to reach them before you put a single seed in the ground, then that $80 crop is worth precisely nothing. I want you to picture how this actually ends for most people. It's not dramatic, there's no disaster, no drought, no crop failure. It goes like this. You do everything right, you pick a high-value crop, you research it, you buy the seed, you baby it all season long, and it works. You get a beautiful harvest exactly the way the video said you would. You're standing in your kitchen at 11 at night looking at maybe 40 pounds of something worth $80 a pound at retail, and in your head that's over $3,000 sitting on your counter. And then it hits you. You don't have a single phone number. You don't know who buys this. You don't know what they pay, whether they want it fresh or dried, what quantity they need, or whether they already have a supplier they've used for 11 years. You have a perishable product with maybe a 5-day window, no buyer, and no idea where to start. So you panic. You post it on a local marketplace. Maybe you get $12 a pound from somebody who's never heard of it. Maybe you sell a little at a roadside table. And most of it, the majority of that beautiful harvest, goes soft, goes brown, and goes in the compost. And that's how it ends. Not in failure, in a compost pile full of something that genuinely was worth $3,000 to someone you never found. That's what I want to fix today. This whole video is the half of the conversation nobody has with you. Not what to grow, who pays, what they actually want, what they'll actually give you, and how to lock that in before you spend $1 on seed. Stick with me, because near the end, I'm going to explain the single biggest mistake in this entire business, which is that almost everyone does these two steps in exactly the wrong order. Quick thing first, if this is the kind of thing you want more of, the practical side that most channels skip, hit subscribe. It genuinely helps this channel reach the people who need it. And now, let's get into it. Let's start by fixing the number in your head, because the $80 is doing a lot of damage. There is no such thing as the price of a crop. There are at least 3 completely different prices for the same product on the same day, and the gap between them is enormous. The first price is retail. That's the number on the shelf or the number on the specialty website. That's the number those videos quote you, because it's the biggest one. But that price includes somebody's storefront, their staff, their packaging, their spoilage losses, their marketing, and their profit margin. You are not going to get that price unless you are doing all of that work yourself. The second price is wholesale. That's what a distributor or a store pays when they buy from a grower. Depending on the product, that's frequently somewhere around half of retail, sometimes less. That's the price where you hand over a large amount of product, get paid once, and go home. Lower per pound, but far less work per pound. And the third price is the one nobody talks about, which is what you actually net. That's wholesale, minus your seed, your inputs, your packaging, your fuel to deliver, your losses to spoilage, and above all, your hours. There are crops that look spectacular at retail and are miserable once you count the labor, because they need 8 hours of hand harvesting for what ends up being a few $100s. So when a video tells you $80 a pound, the honest translation is this: Somewhere in the chain, that product sells for $80 to a consumer. Your share of that number depends entirely on which buyer you sell to and how much of that chain you're willing to do yourself. That's not a reason to give up. It's the opposite. It's the thing that lets you plan properly, because now you can pick your buyer based on how much work you want to do, instead of getting shocked in November. So let's go through them. These are the buyers who actually exist for high-value crops, roughly from smallest and most personal to largest and most industrial. The first one is chefs. Independent restaurants specifically, not chains. This is the single most underrated buyer in this entire business, and it's where most specialty growers get their start. A good chef at a serious independent restaurant will pay well above grocery prices for something they can't get from their regular distributor. Unusual herbs, edible flowers, specialty greens, heirloom varieties with real flavor. Mushrooms, anything that lets them put something on the menu their competition doesn't have. Here's what you need to understand about chefs, though, because this is where growers blow it. Chefs are not primarily buying on price. They're buying on reliability. A chef who puts your product on a printed menu is making a promise to their customers, and if you show up in week 3 saying you had a bad week, you've just made them look bad in front of their guests. That is the fastest way to never sell to that restaurant again. So what they want is consistency. Same quality, same day of the week, same quantity, all season. If you can promise a small amount reliably, that beats a huge amount unpredictably every single time. And how do you approach them? Not during service. Never walk into a restaurant at 7 on a Friday night with a bag of produce. Go mid-afternoon, somewhere between 2 and 4, when the lunch rush is done and dinner prep is underway. Bring a sample, physically, in your hand. Have a price ready, say what you have, when you can deliver, and how much. Keep the whole thing under 2 minutes, because they're busy and they will respect you for being brief. The second buyer is farmers markets, and this one is genuinely different from all the others. At a farmers market, you're not selling to a buyer, you're being a retailer. That means you capture that full retail price, the big number, instead of wholesale. That's the appeal, and it's a real one. But be honest about the trade. You are paying for that higher price with your Saturday, every Saturday, plus setup, plus the drive, plus stall fees, plus whatever doesn't sell coming home with you. You need permits in most places. You need to handle cash and cards. You need to be a person who can talk to strangers all morning. For some people, that's genuinely enjoyable. And there's real value beyond money, because a market is where you meet your future customers, including chefs who shop there. For others, it's a miserable use of a weekend. Know which one you are before you build a business around it. The third buyer is one almost nobody mentions, and it's a serious blind spot in this whole niche: ethnic grocery stores. Go and walk into an Asian, Indian, Caribbean, Middle Eastern, or Eastern European grocery in your nearest city. Look at the produce section carefully. You will find things there you don't see anywhere else, and a lot of them are being shipped from very far away at significant cost, arriving tired and half dead. Those store owners have a genuine ongoing problem, which is that they cannot get certain items fresh and local. If you can grow the specific varieties their customers actually want, you're solving a problem that has been annoying them for years. The catch is, you have to grow the right variety, not the closest thing. There's usually a specific type their customers recognize, and a substitute won't do. So go in, ask, and listen. Ask what they wish they could get fresh. That one question, asked honestly in a handful of stores, will teach you more about what to plant than any video on this platform, including this one. The fourth buyer is the herbal and supplement world. This covers herbalists, apothecaries, tea blenders, soap and skincare makers, and small supplement companies. They buy medicinal roots, flowers, and leaves, and they usually want them dried rather than fresh, which changes everything for you. That's a big advantage worth understanding. A dried product doesn't rot in 5 days. It sits in a sealed container for a year. That removes the panic factor completely, and it means you can ship it which means your buyer doesn't have to be within driving distance. The trade-off is that this world cares intensely about quality standards. They'll ask how it was grown, whether anything was sprayed, how it was dried, how it was stored. Many will want organic certification or at least a serious conversation about your practices. And drying properly is a real skill. Do it badly, and you've turned a valuable crop into brown dust. The fifth buyer is distilleries and breweries. This one is growing fast, and hardly anyone in this niche talks about it. Craft distilleries need botanicals for gin. Breweries want fruit, herbs, and unusual flavorings for seasonal releases. Cideries want specific apple varieties. And these businesses love a local story because it goes straight on their label and in their marketing. They tend to buy in defined batches rather than weekly, which suits some growers perfectly. Get one product into one seasonal release, and you may have a repeating annual order. The sixth buyer is the flower trade: florists, event planners, and wedding designers. Cut flowers are their own universe, and locally grown is having a genuine moment because imported flowers are often days old and treated with things people are increasingly uncomfortable about. Wedding work in particular pays extremely well because the client is already spending significantly and wants specific colors and specific varieties on a specific date. Dried flowers deserve a special mention here because they've become popular for arrangements and crafts, and like dried herbs, they don't spoil on you. A dried flower business runs on a completely different clock than a fresh one. The seventh buyer is the animal side: feed stores, pet shops, and specialty animal keepers. This sounds unglamorous, and it's absolutely a real market. Wheatgrass and microgreens for pets, specific greens for reptile and tortoise keepers, herbs for rabbit and chicken owners, fodder for small livestock operations. These buyers are consistent, unfussy about cosmetic appearance, and they're buying year-round rather than seasonally. The eighth buyer is wholesale distributors and grocery chains. This is the big end: real volume, regular orders, and one point of contact instead of 30. It's also the lowest price per pound of anything on this list, and it usually comes with requirements: food safety certification, liability insurance, specific packaging, and the ability to deliver a consistent quantity every single week without fail. This is not where you start, it's where you go once you know you can produce reliably at scale, and it can be an excellent place to be. Just don't build your first season's plan around it. And the ninth is selling directly to the people who eat it: subscription boxes, a farm stand, online sales, local social media groups. You keep the entire retail price, which is the best margin available to you anywhere, and you pay for that by becoming a marketer, a customer service department, and a delivery driver. For small volumes of high-value product, it can be outstanding. It also fails quietly for a lot of people who thought they'd just grow things and never expected to be running social media accounts. Now, before I get to the biggest mistake, tell me something in the comments. Have you ever grown something you couldn't sell? Or, better, have you found a buyer nobody else seems to know about? I read these, and honestly, the comments on videos like this end up more useful than the video itself, because it's real people describing real markets in real places. So tell me what happened where you are. All right, the mistake. Almost everyone in this business does two steps in the wrong order. They choose a crop, they grow it, and then they go looking for a buyer. Flip it. Find the buyer first, then grow what that buyer already wants. I know that sounds obvious when you say it out loud. Almost nobody does it because finding buyers is uncomfortable work, and browsing crop videos is fun. But think about what it changes. If you find the buyer first, you're not guessing. You know what variety they want because you asked. You know what they'll pay because you asked. You know how much they can absorb, so you know how much to plant instead of wildly over or under producing. You know whether they want it fresh or dried and when in the season they need it. And you know before you've spent $1 whether this is a real business or a hobby. Here's what that actually looks like practically, and it's not complicated. Before you plant anything, Pick 3 or 4 potential buyers in your area, real ones with names and addresses. Go and talk to them in person where you can, and ask 3 questions. First, what do you buy right now that you're not happy with? That tells you where the opening is. Second, what would you buy locally if somebody grew it well? That's them telling you exactly what to plant. And third, what quantity would you take, how often, and roughly what would you pay? That's your entire business plan in one answer. Take notes, do that 4 or 5 times, and you'll notice the same 2 or 3 items keep coming up. That's your crop, not the one from the video, the one your actual local market keeps asking for. And then, if you can, get some kind of commitment before you plant. It doesn't have to be a formal contract, though those exist and are great. Even a chef saying, if you have that in August, I'll take 5 pounds a week, is enormously more than most growers ever have. One more thing on that conversation, because it's where people freeze up. What do you say when they ask your price? Don't guess, and don't make one up on the spot. Before you walk in, find out what that item currently costs at retail in your area and what a distributor charges for it. Then price yourself between those 2 numbers, closer to wholesale if you want volume and an easy life, closer to retail if you're offering something genuinely better or something they simply cannot get. And if you don't know, it is completely acceptable to say so. Telling a buyer, I'm new to this, what do you normally pay for something like this? Works far better than most people expect. Buyers deal with suppliers constantly, and they'd rather train a reliable new grower than break in a difficult one. The people who lose out here are the ones who bluff, quote something absurd, and never get a second conversation. Now let me hit a couple of things that trip people up, because I'd rather you hear them from me now than learn them in October. The first is volume mismatch, and it goes in both directions. You can be too small and you can be too big. A distributor may need 400 pounds a week and laugh politely at your 30. A chef may need 6 pounds a week and be genuinely unable to use your 200. Neither of those is a failure of your growing. It's a mismatch you could have detected with one conversation. The second is perishability. A fresh crop starts losing value the moment you cut it. Some have a window of days. So your buyer needs to be found before harvest, not after, and ideally within a sensible drive. This is exactly why dried products, herbs, roots, flowers are so much friendlier for beginners. They wait for you. The third is that in almost every case, your first buyer comes from a conversation, not from the internet, not from a listing site, not from an ad, from walking into a place, introducing yourself, and asking a question. That's uncomfortable for a lot of people, and it's genuinely the entire game. And since we're in the middle of summer right now, one practical note. This is the single best time of year to be having these conversations. Restaurants are busy and running specials. Markets are at peak. Buyers are actively thinking about produce right now in a way they simply are not in February. You do not need a harvest in your hand to walk in and ask what someone wishes they could get locally. Do it this week and you'll be planning next season from knowledge instead of guesswork. So here's where we land. That $80 a pound figure isn't a lie. It's just half a sentence. The full sentence is that this crop is worth $80 a pound to a specific person who needs it in a specific form at a specific time. And your job is not really growing. Your job is finding that person and becoming reliable to them. The growers who make this work aren't better at growing than the ones who fail. Very often, they're worse. What they have is a buyer, and the whole rest of it flows backwards from that one relationship. So please, don't let this be another video where you write down a crop name and go buy seeds. Go and have one conversation this week. One chef, one store owner, one market vendor. Ask them what they wish they could get locally. That single conversation is worth more than every crop list on this platform combined, including mine. If this was useful, hit the like button It genuinely helps this reach other people who are about to make an expensive mistake. And drop a comment telling me what you'd want next, because I'm thinking of going buyer by buyer and doing a full breakdown of each one, starting with restaurants, since that's where most people should begin. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.